Aloha and welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. We're coming to you from beautiful Waikiki Beach. We're right here, right next to the Duke statue, close to the Duke statue, and right next to St. Augustine's Catholic Church. In fact, our studio is right above the altar, basically, just it's right next to us, so couldn't be in a better spot. Beautiful day here in Waikiki Beach. Not as much waves. This is the time of year when the big swells, the 40, 50-foot swells start breaking on the North Shore, and here on the south side, where we're kind of protected from the big surf, things kind of go flat. So it's a good time to go spear fishing or do some stand-up paddling. But beautiful day here in Waikiki. We'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Kickstart that engine and roll thunder with the pack. Explore the grittiness of manly spirituality. Gain traction in the virtues. Soup up your spiritual engine by turning adversity into adventure. Now here's Bear Woznick. Let's ride.
Aloha, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. I'm your host, Bear Woznick, and my co-host today is going to be Paul Sofranko. We're going to talk about the Catholic. His website is sobercatholic.com. He's going to talk about the Sober Catholic Way. I think this is a really important conversation. I was working on my newest book, Man Meditations for Men of Grit and Grace, and I just written down that the next thing I want to talk about is from 1 Peter, be sober. I wrote that down. I closed my iPad, and I looked at the mail, and here I get this email right then from Paul Sofranko telling us about his work, his sobercatholic.com website, and a book that he's written called The Sober Catholic Way. And I don't consider that a coincidence. I consider that a godsend. Jason Jones and I call it Holy Spirit Action Plan. So we have Paul Sofranko with us here today. We're gonna talk about his life story, his life journey. I really want you to listen. A lot of you, there's some people out there who really don't think that they have a sobriety problem in their life. They just are people that like to drink a lot, and there may be those that are really, really know they have a problem. And we know there are many great ways that God has used. My wife's best friend has been clean and sober through AA for 25 years. And she still goes almost every day to those meetings. But there's a lot of different ways that God can bring you to full sobriety. And Paul has a very special way that I think is unique for Catholics. So, Paul, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here, man. So we want to hear we would like to hear, the Bear Woznick Adventure, you know why it's so great is because we have great guests. And we just believe that God has an adventure for everybody. And so we'd like to hear your story before we hear more about the different ways that people can use the Catholic faith to help them grow in sobriety. So can you tell us I know you started out, I believe, as a cradle Catholic. Where were you, first of all? Where were you raised?
I was born and raised in upstate New York, a small town called Oneida.
Is anywhere close? Is anywhere close to Syracuse?
It's about 25 miles east of Syracuse. It's between Syracuse and Utica.
Okay, well,
it's mostly known. Good.
We got to meet each other because I'm going to be speaking up there. I think in February of this year to the big men's conference in Syracuse. So.
Well, I'm no longer there. I live in Orchard Park, New York, which is just south of. It's a Rosary and Divine Mercy Chaplet drive south of Buffalo.
Oh, okay. Well, tell us about your story.
Like I said, I was born and raised in Oneida. I went to my parents were both very devout Catholics. My mother worked in the school. I was educated from kindergarten through 8th grade at St. Patrick's School. She worked there as a teacher's aide and whatnot, and my father was active in the church as a Eucharistic minister and lector. I learned the faith through, the nuns taught us a lot, and the priests also were active in teaching religion classes. I continued learning about the faith at CCD classes in the public high school that I went to. Then I went off to college. I continued the faith there, but after I graduated from college, I moved to Washington, D.C. to study for graduate school. The less said about that, the better. But I was going through a very bad period. I was in way over my head. I was in a very specialized program, and I barely qualified to be admitted. And I was, like I said, I was in way over my head, and I was going through some very depressing times. And I was praying to be released from all the trauma and the troubles and trials that I was going through, and I wasn't.
Do you
They
want to
just kept
tell us
getting
about? Do you want to tell us about those, or too private, or?
No, I was going for like Russian and East European studies, which is a very specialized program. Like I said, I barely qualified for it. I had taken some classes in Russian language in school and some Russian history, but I only had the basics. And everybody else who was going there had more extensive academic backgrounds. And being way in over my head, being overwhelmed in an academic setting was a bit of a shock to me because I was a very good student, A's and B's and whatever, and I was mastered whatever I did. So this was like a shock to my system, my ego, my sense of self-worth,
Mm.
and I was looking for a release. I did drink a little bit, but not too much. Um, it gave me some relief, but I never really went back to drinking over and over again to get that release. I was contemplating suicide, but I never went through it
No
other than,
kidding. It was that
yeah,
heavy. It was that
it was
heavy.
that heavy. Yeah, it was. I was also alone. I didn't have very many friends. Prior to this, I always had my own little circle of friends and such, but in school, and at the graduate school that I went to, I didn't really. There were classmates, but I
There was no connection.
no connection, exactly, no connection with any of them. Um,
Did you ever read Tolstoy or Solzhenitsyn? Were you ever good enough at your Russian to read that in Russian?
no, no, I never did.
Yeah,
No.
it's hard enough to read it when it's translated. you
Yeah, I
know?
know. It is.
So that's pretty rugged you're the first time you're probably further away from your family than you've been
Yes.
used to, and then
Yeah.
to not have any connection. There's a scripture verse that says, I forget it. It's in 1 Corinthians, I think 13:16. It says, "Be strong, be on the alert, act like men," and it kind of implies that to act like a man, you need to be with men. And when that connection doesn't happen, it can just be really hard if you don't have brothers to support you.
I did make an awful lot of phone calls to family, mostly old college friends.
Oh, okay.
So I had like huge phone bills. But it was probably annoying to them, but for me to call all the time and being very depressing, the phone would probably ring and they would say it was probably him. But thankfully they took it. That probably actually kept me away from drinking for a while. I mean, if I didn't have that, I probably would have explored alcohol a lot more than I did. But as I was saying before, I had prayed for deliverance, but it wasn't happening.
Prayed for
Things were just getting
deliverance.
worse.
Prayed from deliverance from your
The
situation.
situation that I
Oh,
was
yes.
in,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
I would, however God wanted to do it, I would somehow survive. I ended up quitting graduate school, and I made a formal decision to quit school, and then a little bit later, I didn't know how to do it, so I just said I'm not going to go to church anymore. My
Mm.
prayers were not answered. My prayers were not being answered at all. Things were getting worse, so I
Well,
decided to
you're
not go to church anymore.
okay.
I
So
just
let's
skipped
talk about
mass.
that. Let's talk about that for a moment. So your prayers weren't being answered the way you wanted them to be answered and when you wanted them to
Right.
be answered. But a lot of times the no
Exactly.
answer is an answer. It's like a season to go deeper. And your response to that was, well, if that's all there is, then turn
Yeah.
your back on it. So rugged decision, but
I
understandable.
didn't. I didn't know that at the time. Whether God answers prayers in His time, or sometimes the non-answer is the answer. I just, my prayers weren't being answered. Therefore, I figured there's no point in it. So I'm not going to go to mass anymore. I made the conscious decision to not go to mass. I didn't, and I survived. I wasn't like zapped with little blue lightning bolts. I managed to, so
Hmm.
I continued, and actually, life got better. I got a job, a decent job in what have you. So materially, things got better. Spiritually, I wasn't going to mass at all. I still believed in God, and I didn't go down the atheist route. To me, that was always ridiculous.
Did you
To
believe there
me,
was a God? Did you believe in
yes.
Jesus? Did you believe in Jesus?
I believe that there was a God, but that he created the universe, he created humanity, but he didn't necessarily interact with humanity in the same way that Christianity says.
Yeah,
He
you know,
didn't necessarily reveal himself.
I understand that. We're gonna take a break here in a moment, but I remember that was like that too. I guess it's a deistic approach where you feel like, well, God created the universe, He wound it up like a clock, and now it's just
Hmm.
ticking, and He's not involved in my life. But I wanted Him to
Yeah,
be. I always saw
yeah.
God as kind of like a father that sent child support checks, but didn't care enough to play
Hmm.
football with me. We're
Yeah.
talking with Paul Sofranko. His book is called. Your website, Paul. What is your name of your website?
Sober Catholic. The address is sobercatholic.com.
And the name of the book is.
The Sober Catholic Way.
I'm talking with Paul. How do I say it? Paul Sofranko. Am I saying that right?
That's good enough.
That's close enough. Yeah, no one
That's
can.
close
I
enough.
can't even pronounce my name, Woznick. It's really hard to do. We'll be right back with the Bear Woznick Adventure. SchoolofManliness.com is a place for men of grit and grace to join together, to inspire, to encourage, and to challenge each other to grow in manly virtue. Members receive morning man meditations, a monthly curriculum that is rich with audio, video, and written content, and a trail guide to help you map out your new trajectory. Many of our members lead their sons through this same curriculum. Your membership gives you access to both the Man Cave, which is our non-Facebook type community, and the School of Manliness at schoolofmanliness.com. Become a member at schoolofmanliness.com. Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick Adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick Adventure possible. That they were born with, that each man individually is factory loaded with by God. Paul said, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, do all things in love. Finally, here is a book that talks with men the way men talk with each other. Just plain old straight shoot. By the way, Mama Bears, this is your chance to get this message to your men. Go to schoolofmanliness.com or anywhere books are sold. 12 Rules for Manliness. Where have all the cowboys gone? Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness. Where have all the cowboys gone? Get real. This is the kind of grappling that God wants to do with us, like Jacob wrestling with God in the desert. When a fighter is losing, he closes distance and clinches so that his opponent's fists don't hurt so much. Jacob's words to the angel of the Lord on that long, dark night was that he would not let go until he blessed him. So wrestle it out with God. A little blood, sweat, and tears is a lot more real than sweet, neutered self-excuses. Say yes to God and ask Him for the grit and the grace to pursue His will.
This is a warning. The Bear Woznick Adventure is dangerous. The radical change Bear challenges you to is not for wimps. Change this station now to a soft rock station before it's too late. You've been warned. Now, here is Bear Woznick.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure. I want to let everybody know my latest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone, has been ranked up as the highest number 5 in Christian books for men. It's a great read. It's for men of grit and grace. And so I encourage you to women out there to buy this book for the men. Men, go to sophiapublishing.com. I think we're on the EWTN catalog. You can go to Amazon. Go to our website, schoolofmanliness.com, and I can send an autographed copy to you. But even if you think you're not the person who likes to read, you will like this book. A lot of the men have said that they've read it. When it first came out on Amazon, the reviews, several of the men said, I read it. I don't like to read, but I read it in one weekend, and then on Monday I started it again. So it's kind of a book that it'll feel like I've been reading your mail, because it speaks to you like men speak with each other. And so I encourage you to get the book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? And speaking of cowboys, we got Paul Sofranko here in the house. He's, the thing I like about you, Paul, is you're genuine. You're letting us see who you really are. The times when things were really tough and maybe you weren't being the man that you wanted to be, and how you wrestled with God, and how God brought you back to sobriety. So you just started out in your career. Paul, I can remember when I first started out of my career. I went to Baylor University. I got a degree in accounting, and I had worked with small CPA firms through college, and I was ready to take on the world. And then the only job I could get was accounts payable supervisor at a hospital. And because I'd chosen to move to Las Cruces, where my wife was going to college, and I just went into deep depression. I thought, this isn't what I thought my life was going to be. I thought, I'd be working for a CPA firm or something else. And so I know that moment when you're first launching your career, how when things aren't going the way you hoped, it can be really devastating because you don't have a big track record to look back on. Eventually, through that job, I got hired on with one of the big 4 CPA firms. So but first I went through that time of real self-doubt, and I wouldn't call it self-loathing, but I'd never felt depression before, and I was just walking in depression. And then all of a sudden the baby's coming, and I got to support my family, and so it was a real dark time for me. So you went through that time of just hitting a wall. You don't realize that God closes doors and opens doors, but He closed that door, and so you began a pretty good job. And then tell us what happened.
I lived in D.C. for like 6 years. I kept that job for about 4 of those years. The economy started to tank a little bit. My job was as a title abstractor, a title searcher for a very small title company. And in 1990, 1991, there was an economic downturn and work dried up. So I lost that job. I ended up moving to California. I had always fancied myself to being a writer, and I had chanced upon an article about how if you are into science fiction and fantasy, you should go to California and try and break it in there, because people in the 1970s, 1980s, people who worked in Hollywood didn't really understand science fiction. So I took the article I wrote a spec plate.
Who were you, Isaac Asimov fan, or who were you?
I was a huge Isaac Asimov,
yeah,
Arthur
me
C.
too.
Clarke, Robert Heinlein, all those.
Robert Heinlein, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love those guys. And so where did you go? Where did you go in California?
I lived in Orange County and Long Beach for several years. Yeah.
Beautiful.
The script never sold, and that's where my drinking started. Like I mentioned before, I never really drank much in Washington, despite this severe depression. But when I moved to California, I met people who were pretty heavy social drinkers. So I drank socially with them. We did some bar hopping, which I never did.
Let me
in
ask you
DC.
a question. Is pretty heavy social drinkers another word for alcoholic?
Some of them were, but not all of them.
Okay, I understand.
I and a lot of them could drink when we wanted to or needed to, but we could stop, and go for like weeks without it. But, I ended up with another nice job after a couple of years, and I did something really, really stupid. There was a female colleague that I was working with very closely with, and I was attracted to her. And I tried to initiate an inter-office romance. It didn't work. She rejected me for a variety of very legitimate reasons. And about a month after that, I lost the job, and that's when my drinking became worse. I started drinking not socially. I started drinking very heavily to cope to
Were,
solve
weren't
my
you were you
problems, to
worried
feel
about that?
better.
Did you feel the downward slide? Were you not aware of it, or what were your self feelings when you?
I was aware of it. I just didn't care. When I
Ah, right.
when I lost the job, for the month of October 1994, Captain Morgan's original Puerto Rican spice rum and bags of Doritos were my nutrition.
Oh,
Um, so that's pretty much all that I had. And I knew I was aware of the downward slide, but like I said, I didn't really care at the time. Again, I entered another suicidal phase. I assumed 1995 would be my last year on this earth. That didn't happen. I never really did anything about it again. But still, I figured I was just drinking myself to death. I slowly emerged after several months of this. I had walks on the beach and what have you. I started to feel a little bit better, emerging a little bit from the dark cloud. I ended up getting various temporary jobs. Uh, my drinking was may have lessened a bit, but still, I was still drinking. Um, it did not affect my work performance in this instance, but still, I would go home and have a few, or we'll stay on the weekends and such. The summer of 1995, my father passed away, and my
mm.
mom had some health issues, and so I moved back home to Oneida. There was nothing really keeping me in Southern California anymore. Um, I was feeling a little bit oppressed, even the sheer numbers of people. It's very heavily populated, and I just felt myself a failure. So I figured my
And
mom needed,
keeping up with the Joneses there is
yeah,
like image. Well, there's a saying I used to see on bumper stickers when I lived in Southern California. Image is everything.
yeah,
Like, don't care about your substance, or just if you just look good, And
yeah.
there's a lot of people just trying to fake it till they make it, but they're really just
Mhm.
faking it, And
Yeah.
so that you brought what a contrast that was then when you headed back to New York,
Hmm.
to Oneida, as you say. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Did you
lived
get to
with my
spend
mom for
time? Did you get to spend time with your dad? Before he passed away, or
no, because when I lived in California, I never went back home to visit.
okay,
So he passed away before the last time I saw him was in like August of 1991,
oh,
just
okay,
before I left. And
okay. But
my
your
last
mom,
conversation with him, God,
what was your
sorry,
last conversation with him?
my last conversation with my father actually was an argument. So that's a little bit
Mm.
something of I don't know. It's a sadness, but
But
it is what
he's your sobriety may be a lot because of his prayers for you. He
probably yeah,
understands. He
probably yeah.
understands. He understands.
Hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you went home to help your mom.
I went home to help my mom. Um, See, my father had passed away because he had an operation on his foot. He had a torn Achilles tendon, and it was slow to heal. And he was laid up in the house for like months on end, and there was construction going on outside the house, and he couldn't leave to go do anything. They're repairing the roads, and it was a lot of stress on him. And my mom had to go. They were in their 70s, 80s actually, sorry, 80s. And my mom would go shopping, whatever, but she'd have to park the car like blocks away and haul everything by herself. And that just killed him because he was very active. He was a big, strong man, even though he was 83 years old. He
And
was
so he
big
was
and
stuck in
strong.
the house. He couldn't
He
even
was
go
stuck in the
outside.
house,
He was
couldn't go
so
for walks, couldn't go to mass. He couldn't help my mom bring stuff in,
yeah,
and he had a heart attack. The
yeah.
weird thing is, my mom had the same problem with her foot. She had a torn Achilles tendon, and she had to have
Mm,
an operation on that. And so that was like freaking the family out a little bit.
mm.
Um, so I went home and I attended to her,
Well,
what have you.
let's take a little break here. We
Sure.
want to get back so we can really go deep in it. So you went back and you were taking care. My father was a wonderful Catholic deacon, but he ended up having to need assisted living for the last year of his life, and it was during COVID. Talk about a heartbreak for him. We would come and wave at him through the window. It was pretty till we eventually just brought him home. My sister brought him home, but it's tough to see your mom and dad go through something like that. We're talking with Paul Sofranko. What's your website again, Paul?
SoberCatholic.com.
And the name of the book?
The Sober Catholic Way.
And they can get that at your website, right?
There are links to on the website through Amazon.
Okay,
They could
good.
get it as
Well,
an Amazon Barnes and Noble paperback, and for your Amazon Kindle, you could get a paperback, print on demand. Barnes and Noble also print on demand and as a for your
Okay.
Barnes and Noble Nook.
But it's called what again? What's the name of the book?
The Sober Catholic Way.
Excellent. So we'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick Adventure and Paul Sofranko. Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Being a father is about the greatest adventure that any man can ever have. A father is a bucket of grit, fortitude, know-how, and worry, mingled with hopeful determination that he will give his children the best home possible and the best possible start in life to pursue a rich, beautiful, well-lived life. And also, this is a life he knows that will go on forever. As he shoulders the responsibilities to care for his bride and their children, with all the hopes and worries that go along with that, he goes from not even knowing how to hold a baby to holding the whole future of a child in his hands. He grows into his fatherhood and into his manhood as he accepts that responsibility and lays down his life in love. Go to schoolofmanliness.com and subscribe to our weekly email to receive video YouTube links of the Bear Woznick radio show, as well as the Spirit of Adventure with Bear and Cindy TV show, which, by the way, is filmed in the tropics, as well as our manly evangelistic YouTube shorts. Go to schoolofmanliness.com.
Be the kind of man that when he gets out of bed in the morning, the devil says, "Oh no, he's up." Go to deepadventure.com and invite Bear to speak.
Aloha, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. We want to invite you to go to the schoolofmanliness.com and ask the men to join the Man Cave. It's a non-Facebook community of men, which means we share with each other the challenges we're facing, the good news we have, the behold my bear moments, you know, when you're about to do something stupid, or if you have done something stupid. So it's like Facebook, but it's not on the Facebook platform. And once a month, maybe a little bit more often than that, we get together for it's kind of like a Zoom call, only it's inside of our website, so it's very private. And then we have a 2.5-year curriculum called the School of Manliness that we all go through together. It's 1 month at a time. Like one month we might be talking about the most dangerous prayer you can pray, and there's all kinds of video and audio and written articles and self-assessments, and we go through that together. And it's a great way for fathers to work with their sons, because your sons can get a login. Also, they can't go to the Man Cave, but they can go through the School of Manliness. They have their own login, so you can track them, you can see their progress, and you can do it with them. So schoolofmanliness.com, come and join the Man Cave. We're talking with Paul Sofranko. What's your website again, Paul?
SoberCatholic.com.
Yeah, and your book is called
The Sober Catholic Way.
The Sober Catholic Way. And so you're talking about now you've gone home and you still have a drinking problem, but you're taking care of your mom. We want to hear when the good news starts, but go ahead and tell us. I know things are getting worse, things are piling on. When you drink, things kind of accumulate little by little and get worse and worse, you know, because you're not able to function as well as you could, and your responsibilities kind of fall lax, and your financial situation. How did all that culminate?
Actually, for a few years, I was able to function reasonably well from like 1995 through like 2000 or so. You know, I managed to conceal it. I mean, nobody really suspected that I was a drinker. I became expert at smuggling bottles in to the house and finding excuses to go off and, you know, whatever. I was not a bar hopper, but I still, you know, drank at home. And I was a solitary drinker, which is probably one of the saddest things. But anyway, for the first couple of years, my job was basically take care of her. I ended up getting, you know, because she had the operation, you know, it took a long time for her to heal, her foot to heal. Once her foot did heal, I got, you know, for about a year or so, I got some temporary jobs. And then I found a permanent job working for a major East Coast bank. And that was okay for a couple of years. I figured, okay, I finally settled in. My drinking was under control. I was promoted to another position that was in their technical department. This was during the Y2K scare.
Yeah.
Um, uh, the bank had to upgrade its programming for all its processing systems to be federally compliant to
But
handle post 2000 dates. And since I was very good at what I did in the processing department, I was in
but
their IT department
but
testing all the
let
code and
but
such.
let's skip ahead to when did you hit bottom? Because I want to hear your solution, and we want to make sure we have plenty of time for that.
This promotion, again, just like when I was in Washington, D.C., I was in over my head. I was okay for the first few months, but after the initial projects were completed, I stayed, they kept me because I was good at it, but I was working on harder projects um, with the more serious technical and financial technology bent, and I just was not coping with that at all. So it was like going back to Washington D.C. again with my Russian studies. I was in over my head, and my drinking just came progressively worse to the point where I was smuggling alcohol into the workplace. I would have a few drinks when I would drive to work. I would have a few drinks in the parking lot to uh, fuel me up to get courage. I would sneak a few drinks in my workplace. Yeah, the horror stories was that I would pass out in the bathroom. I would be throwing up in the bathroom and people would be hearing me. I passed out in the company cafeteria once, and which did not impress the Japanese investors that were coming along. They were giving tours of the
Mm-hmm.
place to investors from Japan or whatever, and they noticed it. And they had some questions about that. Why was this employee sleeping in what do you call it? So after a few months, they tried to work with me, but I was still nothing was sinking. To me, this was life was crashing around me again, and I just turned to alcohol to soothe my fears and get courage to go to work and do things at work. They gave me the option of going to treatment or losing my job. They gave me about a month to think about it. I wanted to do AA, but that wasn't good enough for them. They wanted me to go to a treatment facility. I did not want to do that at all, and so I ended up losing my job. Um, I was introduced to AA by my brother-in-law, whose father was an alcoholic, but you know, that still wasn't really working. I got the books, I read the books, they made some sense to me, but I would still be drinking. I hated going to meetings. Meetings for me were the only excuse I can use to get out of the house so I can go to a liquor store and buy vodka. And I would be drinking before, it's just like at work. I would be drinking before meetings to steel myself to go in there. I would be drinking after meetings on the way home, whatever. And just like at work, I sometimes passed out at the meetings. They knew I was not
Mm-mm.
drinking. I would
Yeah.
be slurring my words, saying, the program works, come back, whatever. But I would be slurring my words, and they threatened. My AA sponsor had told me that they were threatening to kick me out, which is
Hard
pretty
love,
much
but yeah. Yeah.
pretty much unheard of because they don't have rules for that because you can go to meetings if you want to. They can't say anything about it. If
But
you have a
what
desire
did
to
you
stay,
do? But what did you do? Because we're running out of time. I want to hear the what helped you.
I was physically unable to go anywhere. The drinking had affected me so severely that I was physically unable to go outside the house, go to meetings, or go to drinks, go to liquor stores. And that resulted in my going through withdrawal. I had DTs. I ended up in the
Mm.
hospital for about a week. And that's how I basically ended up being sober. I cleaned up in the hospital.
Well, tell me about.
But
Go ahead.
no, good. No, that was it.
Well, then you talk about the Catholic way. What's the name of the book again?
The Sober Catholic Way.
Yeah. So how did you find strength as a Catholic? What were the things that you found in your faith?
Well, I was after I got out of the hospital, I was home. I couldn't go anywhere. I wasn't working. I couldn't go to AA meetings. I was laid up on the couch, and my
Hmm.
mom used to watch EWTN an awful lot. She loved Mother Angelica. She loved the morning devotions before the 8 a.m. daily mass, and she would watch the mass, and I would watch it with her. I had no other
Mm.
choice. And this is my first real exposure to the Catholic Church, per se, of the depth and level that they had, that
Yeah,
EWTN presented.
EWTN, man.
Growing up, I was a solid Catholic, the one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church and all that stuff. My knowledge was fairly broad, but it wasn't very deep. That's why when things got bad, I left. But, I was listening to the sermons, to the homilies, and especially Father Angelus Shaughnessy. I don't know if you remember him from 20 odd years ago. He was a priest who was there offline. He had some
Hmm.
very excellent sermons that really hit home, and it was there where I first learned what the Mass was, the representation of the Last Supper and the continuation of the sacrifice on Calvary in unbloodied form. I had never heard that before. And about the real presence of Jesus, the Eucharist is the real
Hmm.
presence.
Hey, can
Body,
I
blood,
can I
soul, and
stop you?
divinity.
I got to stop
Sure.
you for a second, Paul. All of a sudden, you've lit up. We went through that tunnel, and all of a sudden, you've just lit up. So, we got to take a little break here, and then we'll
Sure.
be back, and then we'll let you roll.
Okay.
This is the Bear Woznick Adventure, and now all of a sudden, Paul's got a big old smile on his face, and his countenance has changed. Paul Sofranko, the name of your book is?
The Sober Catholic Way.
Sober Catholic Way, and the name of your website.
Sober Catholic, sobercatholic.com.
Hey, that's awesome. Okay, we'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick Adventure. People love our EWTN TV show, Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick. Thanks to you, the show has won 4 different Tally Awards. And now, instead of waiting each week for the next episode to air, you can actually binge watch our show and even share it with your friends when you go to deepadventure.com and join the Mama Bears or the Man Cave. Along with all the other benefits, you get total access to all the seasons of our aired episodes, plus instant access to episodes that won't even air for several months. Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick, a great way to communicate the gospel in a gritty enough way that even tough men will stop and watch at deepadventure.com. Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Ask yourself the question, what is the real truth about how good a job we men are doing as stewards of our body, as God's temple? Do we have the fitness to fulfill the mission God has given us? Does our fitness attest to our witness of being a man of God? Does our fitness affirm that we live a life of manly virtue, or does our body point to sloth and gluttony? Right in the word discipline is the word disciple. If you want to be a disciple of God, does your physical fitness express that disciplined life of restraint in eating and willingness to work out and to do the things that it takes to remain strong and fit? Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick Adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick Adventure possible. Announcing Spirit Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy. So many people, especially you mama bears, tell us we want more of Bear and Cindy together. Well, we're happy to announce our website, spiritofadventuretv.com, as well as our YouTube channel, Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure, where you can watch Spirit of Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy. Join us where we live in the Hawaiian Islands or where we sail our boat, the Spirit of Adventure, in the Caribbean. Experience both adventure and serenity with us as we share our life together, as well as the joy and the wisdom of our faith. Go to spiritofadventuretv.com to find out more, and subscribe on YouTube to Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure. And join us, Spirit of Adventure, with Bear and Cindy.
Are you still listening? I thought we warned you to change to an easy listening station. Well, you asked for it. Here is more of the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Aloha and welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. We want to invite you all to join us, where we have with us as our guest today Paul Sofranko. We're talking about the Sober Catholic Way. Want to invite you to go to our website, Spirit of Adventure. I think it's Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure TV. All of a sudden I've forgotten. It's Spirit of Adventure. We just changed the name. It's Spirit of Adventure TV with Bear Woznick. We have a couple thousand radio shows and videos there. We've got our daily catechisms there. We have our Spirit Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy, which is kind of following Cindy and I here in Hawaii, or when we're sailing out in the Caribbean for a couple months of the year, and we just share adventures. And of course, the deepest adventure is our walk with the Lord. So, go to our YouTube channel, Spirit of Adventure TV, Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure TV. You'll find it. But just Google it, but subscribe, and then you'll be getting your notifications. We have Paul Sofranko with us here. Paul's sharing with us about his path down the long hole into alcoholism, and the victory the Lord brought him to sobriety. So you're watching Mother Angelica, and I know when I returned to the church, it was EWTN too. Watching Mother Angelica and the great teaching, it just blew my mind. Oh, is that? Oh, so if that means that, then this means that. And then didn't you at some point come across a Catholic catechism?
Yeah, actually, it was about 10 years before, 1994 or 1995, when I was still living in California. I went to a bookstop in Long Beach. It's no longer there. But I was going through the book stacks, and I saw the Catechism of the Catholic Church.
The new one. 95, right? I think it was 95 or something like
1995, yeah. And that's when I bought it, because I think it was right before I went home for my father's funeral. And it was the first catechism in 400 years. And I was like, what about the Baltimore Catechism? I didn't know this was the universal catechism.
Yeah.
I picked it up.
Go ahead,
started
Paul.
reading it in the bookshop, and it just hit me that this is interesting. It didn't really convert me right then and there, but it started the process by which the long, slow, laborious process of me returning to the church, because I was impressed by the writing, and I was impressed by the depth of it.
Yes.
The spirituality, the philosophy, the theology.
Yeah, yes.
I learned a lot of stuff, I learned how much I didn't know. Between that and listening to EWTN, I learned about how much I didn't know. Like, if you went into a time machine and went back to 1970 something or 1980 something and asked me what the Eucharist was, I'm not really sure what I would have said. Because I don't think I ever heard that it's the real presence of Jesus. I knew, because it used to say the body of Christ, so I knew it was the body of Christ, but I don't think I went much further than, is it really literally him in the form of bread, or is it just something symbolic?
And so, you have that mind, though, dude. You've got that Russian mindset. You wanted to learn, I wanted to learn Russian. You got that mind that wants to go deeper, and it's frustrating when you want to go deeper, but you can't. And then you find the catechism, and it's like, oh my God. It's like, you say the same thing in your book that I said. I found out I was swimming in the shallow end of the pool. Those are the same words I use.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And so, but when you find the Catholic faith, it's like, oh my, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. We're talking with Paul Sofranko, who's the author of the book. Tell me that name again.
The Sober Catholic Way.
Okay, so now you're telling us you're watching EWTN, and what happens? And then what? Go ahead.
It just kickstarted, the process of, me learning more about the faith. I learned about the Divine Mercy Chaplet, Divine Mercy Devotion, because my mom prayed that every day.
Did you pray it with her?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but I would watch the program. It was on at, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so she would pray it then, and I would watch it with her. But especially on Divine Mercy Sundays, that was something we did every year. Watch the entire Divine Mercy thing from Springfield, Massachusetts. So that I attribute Divine Mercy also to being one of the things that pulled me home, because I didn't like revert right away. It was a slow process. I'd go to mass with her because she needed to write to church. I didn't tell her that I wasn't a Catholic. I faked it. So I would go to mass and, go through the motions and, receiving Eucharist unworthily, and what have you. Um,
But when did the turn come?
this
When did the turn come? Was there
this
a moment, or was this gradual?
it was gradual. It was me laying on the couch watching EWTN every morning, doing the Divine Mercy thing, getting more intrigued and interested by the faith. So I would get online and do my own stuff. Instead of just receiving the stuff from EWTN or Mass on Sundays, I would get online and start looking up things, about the faith,
Ah,
learning
yeah.
EWTN's website, other websites,
The
Catholic
Vatican, the Vatican website. That's pretty cool
Vatican
too.
website, Catholic Answers' website,
Oh, you
and a
love
bunch
Catholic
of others.
Answers? That tells
Yeah.
us a lot about you. That's awesome. Yeah.
um, and what have you. And then I started looking for things. What did this church have to do with alcoholism? Because
Mm.
I had already stopped drinking, and my head was clear enough. So so I started looking up stuff, and this is what I've mentioned a number of times on Sober Catholic, that I didn't really find a whole lot. There was the Gaelic Society and some Irish things on Matt Talbot, what have you, but nothing that was live, nothing that was like interactive, like forums or interactive blogs where you can write to the person or whatever. And so about 2007 or so, yeah, 2007, almost 18 years ago, I started Sober Catholic. I just started writing my story. I had accumulated enough by January of 2007, I had accumulated enough information with regard to various saints and devotions and what the Mass is, the importance of the sacraments, the Rosary, and what have you, that I just started to use the blog to tell people about that. And so that's pretty much it.
Well, tell us this. There's some of the highlights of your chapters. We have go to Mass and live the sacramental life, adore Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, study the Bible, a Catholic Bible, study the Catechism, read the Imitation. Do you love the Imitation of Christ, Thomas A.
Yep.
Kempis?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
me too. I love that book. It's so humble, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, pray the daily rosary. These are all, that you have the 12 steps of the 12-step system, but these are all steps already included in the spirituality of the church.
Hmm.
Consecrate yourself to Mary. Tell us about some of the things that people can do, and then also we want to keep you need to find you. What's your website again, Paul?
SoberCatholic.com.
Okay, and they can find this book basically anywhere, Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and it's called.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple
and
Books,
and what's it called?
The Sober Catholic Way.
Okay, so you've got about 4 minutes to give us the highlights of the Sober Catholic Way.
The highlights of the Sober Catholic Way, basically, okay, I mentioned that in the book, that if you wanted the short way of it, is Sacred Heart devotion. Study the Sacred Heart devotion. Do the 9 First Fridays. Go to Mass. The Immaculate Heart. Develop a devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Also, study Saint Therese of Lisieux, the Little Flower, the little way of her. Doing ordinary things with great love.
And Saint Therese loved the Imitation. She loved that book.
Yes.
Yeah,
And she memorized it, I think.
sounds like it. Yeah, she quotes it all the time.
Yeah, I've heard that she actually had memorized the book, and they would play games with her. They would read, they would quote, the book and chapter, and she would recite that precise
And
passage
she
from
was.
it.
Oh, that's so inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
haven't
so,
memorized it. I never
but
will,
it's saying it's doing these disciplines of the church
yeah,
they're more than just religious things. There's a tremendous grace that comes.
it's a way of life to me. It's a way of life. Jesus is the divine physician, and the sacraments are healing. From the Mass. Every mass is a healing mass. If you study the words and what have you, what the priest says, for your small anxiety and what have you. Confession. Pope Saint John Paul II said you should go to confession if you want to spiritually develop, spiritually make sufficient spiritual progress. Go to confession at least once a month. So the Mass,
So wait a minute.
sacraments.
That's very important. In fact, we just had a priest on, Father Wade Menezes, last hour, and we recorded the show with him. And again, he said, go to confession every month.
Mm-hmm.
So that discipline of that.
Yeah, and the daily rosary, which I find to be indispensable. Daily rosary and daily Divine Mercy Chaplet.
Isn't it interesting? Like the rosary for us I found it to be the greatest spiritual weapon, the greatest to me for intercessory prayer. I go to the rosary, and it's so powerful. The intercession of Mary, through Mary interceding for us on our behalf to Jesus, and then the prayers to Jesus. I'm not that good at praying the rosary through the different meditations, like the glorious mysteries and the sorrowful mysteries. I'm just going to battle. When I pick up that rosary, I'm just going to battle, and I have it wear it on my wrist. I have the Benedictine, the exorcism.
Cool.
10. Yeah, see, look at you light up. Hey, you guys, we're talking. I really wish we could meet Paul. I know I'm going to be too far away from where you live, but we'll be up there in Syracuse later this year for the men's conference. But we're talking to Paul Sofranko, and your book and your website are
SoberCatholic.com, and the book is The Sober Catholic Way.
Well, really, God bless you. You really have a gift for teaching, and you love to go deep. And you love to go deep, and so God's giving you that type of mind. But we got to go. And now you know what we say here in Hawaii. Ha is the word in Hawaiian for breath, and the word aloha means to give breath. In Hawaii, we have this tradition of holding our breath during the time the sunset hits the ocean till it goes under it, which is about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And there's a whole process of doing that kind of breath. First, you breathe in very deep, and then you learn to exhale every ounce out, and you do that 3 times. And the 4th time you breathe in very deeply, and then when you get all the way filled up, then you sip in some more, and you can hold your breath for 2 or 3 minutes that way. But what you're doing is, as you're breathing in really deeply, then you breathe out. So you're breathing in the good oxygen, you're breathing out the carbon dioxide. That's what the life of the Spirit is. The Holy Spirit gives us breath. My peace I give you, my peace I leave with you, Jesus said. And he breathed his Holy Spirit on his disciples. And so we say, until next week, may the breath of the Holy Spirit aloha you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks for listening to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Find more manly conversation at the Bear Woznick Deep Adventure YouTube channel. Subscribe and ring the bell.